So today we're going to be talking to Chris Helton, and he's going to talk about the ways in which filmmakers and film and television producers and people who are creating content to sell can work with the SBA to fund their projects, and the benefits of that, as opposed to actually raising equity investment from investors, and which means going ahead and setting up the PPM, private placement memorandum, and finding investors and talking them into your project and so forth. So I think as we begin, Chris, do you want to take a few minutes introducing yourself and talking a little bit about how you, what kind of projects you've produced, and then also talking about why you started looking at the SBA as a preferred method for funding, as opposed to sort of the higher risk working with, looking for investors and so forth.
Like she said, my name is Chris Helton. I started a production company in 2003 called Silverline Films after I got out of the Marine Corps. Spent some time there, got my foundation, a lot of kind of the mentality of how I look at a lot of different aspects of life and business were driven out of that military mindset. I went back to college after the Marines and started a production company. And believe it or not, there was a time before YouTube existed, and I was actually one of the first companies in my area to focus on web video. I had cable television programming that I would be doing for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of established my company a little bit bigger in that 2009, 2010 area. I was in Savannah, Georgia, about the same time that state tax credits had gone from a very tiny amount, was not driving any traffic whatsoever to the state. And then there was this huge explosion of major productions and smaller productions coming into town, into the state. But I was in Savannah, Georgia. In Savannah, there's 150,000 people, and it's as far as away from major metropolis as you could get. But I tried as hard as I could to start developing a film background experience, a couple of documentaries, smaller productions, starting out a couple $100,000 and then growing from there. Along the way, I had gotten introduced to a whole bunch of different people. Mm-hmm. A couple producers had come to me and asked if I could help with location scouting and possibly financing their, I think it was $1.5 million film, and started working on that project. And beating the bushes like everybody for somebody else. At the same time, I'm trying to do my own thing. I think we do that a lot in this community. It's a lot of helping. You're trying to do your job and then trying to help somebody else if you can make that connection. And so long story short, I'm in the middle of this production. Next thing I know, somebody calls up and says, it was a friend of mine who brought me on. He says, I got some bad news. The producer and the director, he died. Wow. We're not going to be able to finish this production. Wow. And it was very sudden. It was kind of tragic. He was at a farmer's market. He picked up wrong fruit, and basically he got sepsis and he died.
That's terrible.
It was very, very quick. I had just talked to the guy 3 or 4 days prior to that, and he was very focused and driven and wanted to be down in Savannah, and I can do this movie for this much money, and I was working my heart out, and then I got that bad news. And then, in the aftermath, I had a lot of the documents that he had put together for his production. He had a distribution agreement already in place.
Wow.
And that's something that, at that point, I had been going along with the status quo. How do you finance a film? Well, you get a letter of intent from somebody that is a named talent, then you go get pre-sales, and then you sell your tax credits, and then you go get some gap financing, and maybe a bank will come along with an 18% interest rate, and then hopefully your rich uncle will give you $100,000 or $200,000 or sell his house. Mm-hmm. That was my mentality, because that's what I had been told for the entirety of my, film financing, my film career at that point. This is how you do it, and that's just it. Right? That's what everybody's doing. You run around Los Angeles or wherever you are, mm-hmm. with a script and an idea that if I could just get Brad Pitt to read this, I'm going to be set forever.
I remember that.
But in this case, I found somebody who had convinced the distribution company to rearrange their timing uh, on their contract
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that made it possible through another series of friends of mine that worked at banks. They looked at it and said, because it's drafted this way, you will have the ability to go to a bank and partner with the SBA
Mm-hmm.
that will guarantee that if you don't pay us back for this film, we're going to lend you the money. If you don't pay us back, then the federal government will pay the bank
Mm-hmm.
75%
That's
of the
cool.
outstanding balance, right? So if you make a dud,
Mm-hmm.
the bank can turn around and go to the Uncle Sam and say, hey, these guys, they didn't pay me. They all fell apart, you know? And the bank will at least be made somewhat whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in that instance, that took all of the other problems out of the picture because now I don't have to pay for a broker to go find, somebody to sell my tax credits to,
Mm-hmm.
which they're never going to pay you full price for your tax credits anyway, right? If you have 30% in the state of Georgia and you go to somebody to pre-sell your tax credits, you're going to have to pay that person 2 or 3%, right? But then they're going to lend you the money. They're not going to lend you all of the money that your tax credit's worth. They're going to hedge their bet, and then they're going to charge you interest on top of that. So that your full budget gets further and further away, even though you're making these deals and making headway, right? Even if you had the letter of intent from a known actor who a distribution company says, yeah, you put somebody on there, I can sell that. You still got these gaps, right? And there's companies out there right now that will lend you money. And I know that they are reputable and they're good and they're solid, but they know their business. And their business is, I've got the money, you need the money, and I'm going to charge you what I think is fair because I'm taking the risk on you. And that could be up to 15 to 20 to 25% in some cases, even more.
Right. Unlike credit that you get for a mortgage or personal credit card, there are really no rules or limits for business lending. There's like people can charge rates that are 50%. There can be 50% interest rates. So
I
one
mean,
of the advantages of doing projects by working with the SBA is that they're the fairest lender, or they're the people, the banks having them as your guarantor when you go to a bank and you say, I want to do an SBA loan. It builds in parameters that actually protect you, so you're not paying incredibly high interest rates. You're not you're not you're not dealing with people that actually do business in that not necessarily is entirely favorable to you way.
right, right. They're in it for making money. There's no doubt that when somebody lends you 25% of your budget, if you bring in 80% of your budget or whatever it is,
Mhm.
at 30%, they know that you're over a barrel and they're going to lend you the money. They're happy to lend it to you, but they're going to take all the assurances they can, and they are going to charge you whatever they feel is appropriate. And that's the way that works.